You are listening to I Am Refocused Radio with your host, Shamaya Reed. This show is designed to inspire you to live your purpose and regain your focus. And now, here's your host, Shamaya Reed.
Hey, welcome to I Am Refocused Radio. We are here once again today. We have an awesome, amazing show lineup for you all today. We're going to talk to our special guest, Miss Susan Lander. She is not just an MD, a physician, but she's also an author of So Many Babies. We're going to learn a little bit about that book, but also all about Miss Susan Landers. First and foremost, Miss Susan, I want to say thank you for being on the show today. Take time out of your busy schedule. How are you doing?
I'm fine. Thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here. I like talking on the radio. It's fun.
So before we dive into your awesome book, author of So Many Babies, let's learn a little bit about you and your professional career. How did you get started and what inspired you to take this path?
Well, I was always good at biology and chemistry, and I sort of went the pre-med route in college and went to medical school. But I had a great job before I started medical school. I was working as a scrub tech for surgery in a general hospital where I grew up. I grew up in a small town in South Carolina. So I fell in love with surgery. And I thought that was what I wanted to do. So I went on to medical school in Charleston, South Carolina. And then I decided pediatric surgery was the direction. So I did a pediatric residency. I left the South and I went to Dallas, Texas to do my training at Parkland, which was really busy back then. It still is, and Dallas Children's. And I decided not to do pediatric surgery. I decided to become a specialist in neonatology. And that is a pediatrician who takes care of preemies and sick babies in the NICU. I moved to Houston. I did my training there another 3 years. And I loved practicing neonatology. I was at Texas Children's for 8 years. I met my husband there. We got married. He is also a physician. He is a pediatric nephrologist. And when we got married, I thought, well, this is going to be great. We both just practiced full-time medicine. And it was exciting. It was fun. It was cutting edge, all the ventilators, all the meds, all the therapies. I loved working with the parents of the sick babies. And then I became a mother. And when I became a mother, it was really a rude awakening. And I had to learn how to be a good enough mother. I was a really good doctor, but I had to learn how to be a good enough mother. It's a good thing my husband was a good helper, but I'll tell you, the first 5 or 6 years of being a mom, I had 2 little kids by then. I really thought I was supposed to do everything perfectly. And I had carried my perfectionism from medicine to home, and no mother can do everything perfectly. Children get sick, schedules fall apart, the nanny doesn't show up, the preschool gets closed. Something is always going wrong. And so my husband and I sort of limped along together and learned how to be professional parents, working parents. I learned that I could work full time as long as I didn't bring all the stress from my work home with me. And I began to learn how to take care of myself in my late 30s and early 40s. I enjoyed running. I enjoyed yoga. Did some exercise classes with friends. And when I started taking better care of myself, I noticed that I was a better mother and a better wife. So to make a long story short, my husband and I moved to another city, and we were there for 7 years. And then we moved one more time to Austin, Texas, where I worked for 25 years in neonatology at one of the hospital systems in Austin. And he helped to build Dell Children's Hospital. He was one of the subspecialists that helped create that brand new children's hospital. And we had many years of fulfilling professional lives and raising 3 kids. I retired recently, so I don't work in the NICU anymore. I miss it a lot. I miss the teamwork. I miss the cutting edge medicine. I miss the critical care aspect. But I'll tell you, the people who were there during the pandemic, they had it rough. All the hospital people had it rough during the pandemic. Anyway, after I retired, I decided to write a book. And I contacted some parents of my favorite patients, NICU babies that I had taken care of years and years ago. Some were 10 or 12 years old, some were 18. And I got a hold of all the parents and asked permission and said, I want to write a memoir and I want to write some stories about all my NICU patients. I wanted to tell the story of what life was like in the intensive care nursery. A lot of parents go through this, and the general population is not aware that it's such a stressful time when a family has an unexpected premature baby, or a family is having twins or triplets and they're in the NICU for 3 or 4 months before they go home. I wanted to tell some stories that would shed some light on how things actually were in the neonatal intensive care unit. My friends knew that I was writing a book, and we always talked about our kids, and we always talked about the challenges that we had raising our kids and being working moms. And so my friends convinced me to put stories of my own motherhood challenges in my book. And I pulled out the good and the bad, the challenges and the stumbles and all of the mistakes that I made over 34 years raising 3 children. My son is a cinematographer. My daughter is a pediatric ICU nurse. And my youngest daughter is in school studying to be a psychotherapist. So my kids all grew up learning to be independent because I was gone a lot. Their dad was gone a lot. And in my book, I tried to tell realistic stories about what it's really like to be a working mom, a working physician mom. But I bet I'm not that different from a nurse or a lawyer or an executive or an accountant. Any woman who has a career, who works for a living outside of the home, who also raises children, whether they're married or not, preferably married. That working mother has an unbelievably difficult life. And it's also very rewarding, but it's difficult. And I wanted my book to show the stories of my being a mother, learning to be a good mother, learning how to use helpers, learning how to ask my husband to help me out, learning how to get together with my friends for support, learning how to do self-care in a way that was beneficial to me so that I could keep my head above water. And so in the book, I ended up weaving together stories of NICU patients and inspirational parents with my own stories of being a mom, being a working mom, just everyday stuff, wetting the bed, toddler biting, being bullied at school, a child with dyslexia, another child with an eating disorder. I put it all in there. I put everything in there. I opened up my life in this book and told stories because I wanted it to reassure working mothers, on average working mothers, that what we were doing was difficult and that what we were doing was wonderful. The way we give ourselves to our work, and we still have energy left to give ourselves to our children and our spouse or partner. The way we juggle so many different things is so important. And I think people in the pandemic got a sense of just how tough this working mother thing is. So kids were at home. So moms were working remotely. So were dads. Moms were doing way more household chores than dads. We know that from surveys. then they were doing online education, virtual learning. I mean, who knows how to be a homeschool mom? I couldn't have done that. And so moms had it really, really rough during the pandemic. And as a result of that, now that things are settling down and people are back at work and children are back in school, what I'm hearing from young working mothers is that they are burnt out. I tell stories in my book about 2 times when I was burnt out as a working mother. One, when my youngest daughter was a very rebellious teenager. And another time when my son was being bullied at school by some older boys who were rough and tumble. But the point is sharing these stories of being a working mother, of being burnt out when you're a working mother, sharing that human experience is so crucial for other people to understand, hey, I'm really not so abnormal. I'm like everybody else. And the other thing I like to tell young working mothers, young working parents, is that when they learn to connect with other people, their peers, whether it's coworkers or neighbors or friends or other moms and dads at the soccer field or at the swim meet or at the school function, when they connect with those other parents, they learn that we're all in this together. We are all trying to do the very best we can, get our kids fed nutritionally, have a family dinner, limit screen time, try to get some after school activities, not too many, and also take care of ourselves. And this is no easy feat. And my main message for your listeners today is being a working parent is not easy. It is just always something to do. There's always a challenge. Schedules always get mixed up. Children get sick. Work throws something unexpected at you. And we all seem to manage. And so the burnout resurgence that's happening right now really worries me because I think we're all doing way more work than we were before, and we're not getting the help we need through connection with our peers, with our friends. So one of my main messages is if mothers are burnt out, if working parents are burnt out, they need to talk to somebody. I'm a big proponent of psychotherapy. I've been in psychotherapy off and on during my life, and I'm a big proponent in getting help, talking about your issues with another person. Burnout is a very, very personal thing where you feel physically exhausted. You might feel emotionally overwhelmed, whether it's your work or a very difficult child. You detach from your problems. You sort of don't want to talk to people, or you might not want to talk to your spouse. You might not want to share with a friend. And then finally, you feel like you're not making a difference. You feel like, oh my God, I am not the right mother for this kid, or I am not the right doctor for this patient. And I have been in both situations. I have been in doctor burnout when I was in my early 60s, and I have been in mom burnout. And it feels horrible. And for your listeners who recognize any of these symptoms, I urge them to talk to somebody, talk to their spouse, talk to their friends, call. There's some online services. I don't know much about them, but there's some online psychotherapy services. There's a new hotline, 988, for suicide prevention. We all get pushed to the limit. And we all need to talk to somebody and feel like we're not alone. So if my book helps anybody recognize their own vulnerability and how we're more alike that way than we are different, then I've done a good job.
Once again, listen to I Am Refocused Radio, talking to our guest for today, Miss Susan Lander. She is the author of So Many Babies. And yeah, you mentioned how burnout is something that's pretty common now. When you experienced it, both as a doctor and as a mother, what was some of the ways that you were able to recover from that?
When I had physician burnout, one of my partners actually came up to me, and we had a very difficult patient. There were some ethical issues, and a dad disagreed with what the doctors wanted to do. And it wasn't clear what was the right thing to do. This was a tiny baby who'd been in the NICU for 6 months and had lots and lots of complications. But I was really exasperated one day, and one of my partners came up to me and said, "Have you lost your compassion?" I went, "What?" He said, "You're just not acting like yourself." I went, "Oh my God, you're right. I can't believe it." And so then I sat down and I realized I had been cynical. I had been impatient. I was physically exhausted. I was overwhelmed. This particular case was very emotionally overwhelming. I had detached myself from talking to other parents. I used to love to walk around the nursery and talk to all the parents. I had detached myself from my friends. I would go to the call room and hide and kind of hide away from people. I would do the work that I had to do, but once the work was done, I would separate myself from the unit, and that's unusual. Then finally, the day he said, "Have you lost your compassion?" I thought, I don't even think I'm making a difference. I lost my ability to feel fulfilled. I was just going through the motions. And when I read about physicians and nurses in the pandemic who felt the same way, they were stressed to the max, not enough beds, very sick patients, not enough help, too short staff, and they kept giving and giving and giving. That's how burnout feels. I was lucky when I was burnout. I was able to cut my hours back to 35 hours a week. I went to a lower risk nursery setting where I took care of sick babies, but not ICU babies. And I attended a lot of normal deliveries. I used my 1 or 2 days off a week to have lunch with friends. I started exercising. I started in psychotherapy. I talked to a therapist. I said, "I'm totally burnt out." She said, "Let's talk about it." I started doing hobbies, some needlework. I started playing the piano. I took piano lessons. And my husband and I, talked about the issues. So I cut back my hours. I changed my practice location. I talked to a therapist. I exercised. I did hobbies. I used my right brain to give my overworked left brain a rest. And over about 18 months, I got better. And I am sorry to tell you, it took me about 18 months because I was in my 60s and I had been stressed and working in the NICU for years and years and years. And I bet the pandemic people who feel burnt out, I bet for them, it will also take some number of months to feel better. Some therapy, some support from people who love them, some exercise, whether it's some yoga, some meditation, some journaling. It's a little different for everybody. Getting in a different setting, maybe not that ER, maybe a different ER. Maybe not working at that hospital for a nurse, maybe not working in labor and delivery, maybe going to the newborn nursery. So it's different for everybody, and it depends on what your job is when you get burned out. And it depends on what you like to do once you're trying to recover. But talking to someone and getting support from people who love you is crucial, because everybody around me knew that I was burned out. I was the last to figure it out. When my partner said, "Have you lost your compassion?" I went, "Oh my God, I can't believe it. This has happened to me." And so I know that people in the pandemic, doctors and nurses and respiratory therapists and school teachers, are burned out. And I want to give them permission to say, I'm pretty much at my limit here. Something needs to give. I need to change things, different setting for work, different hours, some therapy, some hobbies, some exercise, talk to somebody, and they can get better. Now, there's something called healing in place, recovery in place. You don't have to quit your job to recover from burnout. It just takes a little longer to recover. But you do need to figure out what things pushed you over the edge. What kind of patient, what setting, what job, what work you did in your job that made it too much, that was an emotional burden. And so recovery is different for different people, and different folks will find help online. There's some very good therapy services online. The American Medical Association has lots of in-services about burnout for physicians. I'm not positive, but I bet the analogous group for nurses has a lot of tools and checklists and whatnot for nurses as well. I'm not sure. I'm just not as up to date about what's going on, what's being offered for nurses that are burned out. But I'm hearing from my friends that nurses are quitting in droves, or moving to a new hospital, or moving to a new setting. So I'm pretty sure that's a symptom of them being burned out. So the answer to your question is, you can recover from burnout. It takes some time. You have to know you have it, and you have to be able to do the work to get to feel better.
You're listening to I Am Refocus Radio, talking to our guest for today, Susan Landers, MD. You can go to our website, susanlandersmd.com. And one more question before we wrap up this interview. When it comes to younger professionals, younger women working and balancing working and family life, what are some ways they can make the move to find a mentor, to find someone that can keep them sharp and keep them motivated?
Oh, that's a great question. I think women underestimate the benefit of having a mentor at work. Having coworkers, especially a mentor who's 5 to 10 years older than you, who's in your workplace, who knows the culture, the workplace culture, someone you can talk to, bounce ideas off of, someone you can just sit down next to at lunch and say, "Hey, I got a problem. Can I run this by you?" And she'll probably say, "Yeah, drop by my office this afternoon before you go." A mentor helps you figure out how to navigate the system, that you are overstressed, that your work is piling up, that this is the wrong job for you, that you can get promoted, and here are all the ways to do it. A mentor cares about a coworker in a way that's different from a regular coworker. They want to see their mentee thrive and do well. They want to invest their time. I used to mentor nurse practitioners and younger pediatricians, and I loved it. I would always sort of, run into them at lunch and say, "Tell me how things are going." And if they had questions, they would, schedule a time to come and talk with me. And when I was younger, I had mentors. I had full professors who were telling me what I needed to do to get promoted, or an older neonatologist who said, this is what you need to do to work in the hospital system and get on this committee and be chief of staff here and work for the American Academy of Pediatrics there. So older people in your workplace who know the ropes, who have been in the business a while, whether it's nursing, medicine, accounting, law, they can give you so much valuable input. Do not hesitate to ask them for their advice. Now, you have to like them and they have to like you. You're not going to be able to work with a mentor who's gruff and nasty and doesn't want to work with you. But if you can find somebody who likes you, who wants to work with you, you are light years ahead of the game, because that person has been through it. That person will help you not make some of the same mistakes. Humans are really stupid about learning. We do so much trial and error. We try things and we fail, and then we try again or try something different. Mentors tell us, oh, that's not going to work. Try this instead. And so the benefit of mentors is they're people with experience who like you and want to see you do well. So my advice, great question. My advice is find one, talk to him or her on a regular basis, even if you just have lunch together and chat. That is beneficial.
Once again, you've been listening to I Am Refocused Radio, talking to our guest today, Susan Landers, MD. Go to her website, susanlandersmd.com. Also, grab her book. Is available on anywhere you can get a book, Amazon. You can go to Barnes & Nobles. You can go to Goodreads. It is called So Many Babies, My Life Balancing a Busy Medical Career and Motherhood by Susan Landers, MD. I want to say once again, thank you for taking time in your schedule, talking to I Am Refocused Radio.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for your questions and thanks for the topic. It's really important. And I appreciate your mentioning my book and my website. I've got lots of resources there for parents. I have a checklist for working mothers to see if they're burnt out. And you can get that on the resources page. It's free. So I hope you'll check out my website and read my blog. And I appreciate your time. Thank you for the invitation.